live. Hi, welcome to the P40 Podcast. This is Shireen Vishmaya, and I'm back with Gary P. Caton. We do this. This is like our annual reunion.
Yeah, spring has not been the same without you, my friend.
Same. I know I missed you. We were doing Project 40 last year, but I realized we always do our podcasts together, like going way back to like 2012 in the spring during ARIES season, because I think of you during ARIES season.
Well, I mean, it's not like I don't have 5 or 6 plans. It's kind of hard not to. I like to joke with people. The first time they see my chart, people have 2 basic reactions. They go, "Oh," or they go, "Oh."
That's the thing, right? When you got those stellium, I get a similar.
It depends on like how you feel about Aries at the moment, I guess, because there's a lot of it.
I have a similar with with the Scorpio stellium people.
Right? People, yeah.
People excited about it. Most people look terrified.
Yeah, well, I think I told you this. You're born on my sister's birthday.
The same year?
No, same day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And no, she's older. Sorry.
Does she also have a stellium in Scorpio?
She does have something else. I think she's Sun Mercury in Scorpio. Yeah. I haven't looked at it in a little while, but yeah. So I mean that's why. And my father was a Scorpio, and so like I love Scorpios, man. But yeah, different signs get different reactions from people depending on their own personal experience, I guess.
Different zodiac strokes for different folks. I know. Yeah. I know. It's true. I think people say that of course, now that everything's getting so watered down and like memed out, everyone's like, oh, Aries, Scorpio, and Gemini are the dreaded signs. Like it's the worst rap. I'm like, oh.
Well, Sam Reynolds has this thing he calls the Zodiac Mafia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like the signs that will get you, like mafia, and I think he includes Pisces in there, which a lot of people think of them as all sweet and, everything. But yeah, people have different versions of like whichever signs. But I think a lot of it has to do with, in Vedic astrology, they call houses 2, 6, 8, and 12 Dhisthana or something like that, right?
Yeah.
I think those are the signs that people have the hardest time with because it's just they're set up to have a difficult relationship with those signs just by the nature of their chart, and so you're naturally going to see them kind of sideways, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's those. I'm not an expert. I can't remember if those are the Dhisthana houses, but I know definitely 8 and 12 is. I think 6 is it. I thought it was. Yeah, I think you're right. I thought 3 was difficult. I don't know. I got to brush up on my notes.
3 is also thought to be like semi Dhisthana or something. I can't. Yeah. You're right. There's some other stuff going on there, but I just I think that forms an interesting relationship, like with those signs end up being more problematic. I was talking to a lady just the other day, and she was like complaining about all these Aries and Leo men that she has a hard time with, and they're her 8th and 12th, and it's like, well, yeah, I could see I could see why you would have a hard time with that energy,
Or the 6-8 pattern too is challenging, 6 or 8 away from you tend to be like the strongest attraction and this most difficult, the enemy pattern, or the my astrological mentor. I always talk about this. I think we might have even talked about this in another podcast, but he called it the sex healing vibration, because 6 in the Virgo role of more of the healer, and then Scorpio is like the transformer through the sexual energy through the 8th house. But he looked at it like depending on who was in the 6th house role and who was in the 8th house role, one would play the servant and one would play the transformer, which I thought was kind of interesting between all this.
Oh yeah. I always tell people, I think the 7th house is like the house of relationships when things are going well.
Yes. Or you're like in that 1-to-1 balance. Like you're trying
You're in that, yeah, you're in that nice balanced state where everything's equal, everything's peaceful, you're getting along, but then it can flip into like an 8th house dynamic or a 6th house dynamic, and depending on which side you're on, you know, things can feel different, right?
Yeah, but then if you think about also if the 7th house is the house of open enemies, sometimes it's the ones that you're supposed to be in this harmonious relationship that you're just, you know, flat, like full out having this open confrontation with.
Yeah, right. Like lovers can turn into enemies, or you know, you probably had that experience where like somebody when you were growing up, somebody that you started out like being enemies with, and for boys it was like, you know, you almost come to blows or did come to blows, and then later on they turn out to be like your bestie, you know, and it's like
Yeah, travel tested relationships. Yeah, that's Libra at 1-7, right? The battle tested relationships. Yeah, but it's interesting. I mean, I do think that, well, since we're in Aries Libra territory, and now today we're doing this podcast on the new moon in Aries, which is kind of a heavy one, right? Because we've got this powerful square going on with Pluto and Saturn, and then
yeah,
South Node
yeah.
sitting there. How are you feeling that?
Oh my God, me personally,
Yeah.
can you believe it? Saturn is going to station 00 degrees 00 minutes. Boom, square my sun, man.
Oh.
Like dead on. So basically, like I get the direct hit one day and the retrograde hit the next day. I think they're actually 2 days apart. So instead of getting the like 1, 2, 3, I get 1, 2, 3. Get the third one way later. So I mean, Saturn, I've just been bogged down with work.
Responsibility.
Yeah, I got like this huge project, along with some regular work that I do seasonally for a calendar. So like there's just, and it's like I'm literally working 7 days a week, evenings too, and it's like, and it's my favorite time of year where all I want to do is be like out in nature and enjoying, you know, all that. And it's like, well, I got to sit inside, and so it's pretty typical Saturn stuff.
Yeah, like there was the heavy responsibilities. And where is Saturn for you natally in your chart again?
It's in the 3rd whole sign house, conjunct my sun and Rahu.
Yeah. There you go.
So writing, I've got like a ton of writing work, and it's kind of my fault really, because I made this talisman back in November when there was an alignment of Sun, Mercury, retrograde, Jupiter, all on the star Antares. And I made this talisman for that alignment. And like within 2 days, I got a call from the horoscope.com people. And she was like, oh, we want you to do all this writing, and it has to be done in a week, or not in a week, in a month, and blah, blah, blah. Can you do it? Yeah, sure.
Wow.
So I did all that, and then they were like, oh, we've got some more writing for you, and oh, we've got some more, and it's like, oh my God, what have I done? I've unleashed this like barrage of work on myself. So I mean, I have no one to blame but myself, right?
Yes, welcome to the world of daily horoscope writing. You feel like you're always in school, always have homework, and have
yes, yeah, and it's like, how can I like basically describe, you know, Mercury and Pisces 25 different ways, right?
Exactly.
So you got your thesaurus out, and you're like, no, I already used that word.
You have to get really creative. It's true, because you end up saying a lot. Like, especially, are you writing daily horoscopes also?
No, what it is it's what I'm working on right now is it's like it's going to be an app, I think, and it's like comparing. So it's like synastry, like.
Yep.
So your Mercury is in Sag?
Me? No, Scorp.
Scorp. Okay. Right. No, your rising's in Sag. Yeah. So like if I were going to compare Mercury in Scorpio to my Mercury in Aries, right? So what are those? What do those two signs have in common?
Mars.
Mars. They're ruled by Mars, right? So like it's so then you have to put on your lens of like a relationship counselor. Okay, like let's build on the strengths of this. What do you two have in common? So here's it now. Here's your differences. Here's your commonalities. Like, how can you make this work? And
Yes.
so yeah, it's kind of a creative challenge of like, just figuring out what each combination has in common and how they can like, meet in the middle in that sweet seventh house spot and not be like,
And
in
six.
one.
Yeah, we're in a 6-8, aren't we? We got the Mars in common. Yeah.
Yeah. So that helps, right? That definitely helps to have that. So yeah, I mean, I kind of like it too, because what I've noticed is that the silver lining for me, or I don't know, bronze, maybe even gold, but like I have to stay off Facebook. I can't, I can't like, I can't read the paper. I can't watch the news. I can't be on Facebook. I'm just like in my own little bubble. And you know what?
Saturn.
I like it.
Mm.
It's like there's no like negativity or drama,
Yeah.
because I can't afford, like if my mindset gets thrown off and I'm sitting here thinking about drama or whatever, I can't focus on the task at hand. So it's like, yeah, because Saturn's like transiting from the 12th, right? So he's forced me into this like secluded place where I have to just focus on my work. And it's like, wow, I'm digging it, because, the drama factor is,
Oh, yeah, Saturn's going through your 12th.
yeah,
That's his house of joy.
right.
Happy.
And that's exactly what I'm finding, is that, reducing the distractions has brought some measure of joy, in the sense of, oh, I don't have to worry about, whose politics is battling who's today, and like, and whether the Kardashians, did this, or, all this drama that is constantly fed to you through the media and whatnot. It's like, I realize like it takes a toll on your attention. It takes a toll on your ability to focus, and yeah, it's nice to be free of that for a little while. It's like fasting or something, right?
Yeah, you're doing like a tech fast or like a social media.
Yeah, basically like a news or media fast, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Yes. Well, that's
Yeah.
interesting that it's squaring the 12th squaring to the 3rd, because it's like saying, look, even if you're home in your office, you're still on a retreat. 12th house is very much about taking that retreat from the worldliness and all the worldly stimulation.
Right.
So it's having you do 3rd house in a different way now, having you do 3rd house focused Saturn version
Yes,
of
exactly. Like stay on message, right?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the higher, like Saturn doesn't like us to waste anything, doesn't want you to waste time or waste your mental
Hmm.
energy. So it sounds like this is allowing you to just prioritize what you actually want to put your mental energy into, which you obviously get a lot more delight about being more of a scholar, a researcher, a writer, a creator than just reading the, I mean, I hear you, instead of being caught up in the news feeds, which is like soul draining.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know. I think I look at it and I go, why the heck was I doing that anyways, right? What exactly is the point? It's like you feel like you're sort of obligated to, like, I don't know, if to be part of the world or something, like in order to be part of the world, you have to know like what's going on with yada yada yada, whatever. And it's like, well, maybe sometimes, but not all the time anyways.
I know, and it's very, I find that they program it to be so addictive that we don't even realize we're scrolling, and it's not like we're actually getting any real nourishment from the scrolling. Once in a while, that's the thing, because it's like that's the whole
It's
point of it.
it's
Like
it's yes.
that
And what do they do in behaviorism, right?
yeah,
Randomly, you hit the button just every once in a blue moon, it'll pop out a pellet, right? Just enough to keep you hitting the thing.
exactly, that's the pellet. Exactly. It's totally that, what is it, variable ratio schedule that keeps us hooked. They know, they designed it that way. So I have to, like, I'll catch myself and I'll just be like, I'm trying to like just leave a place. Sometimes I'll be on my phone. I'm just I just mean to check a text message. I'm trying to get out of like, let's say I just went to work out. I'm trying to get out of there. I am like, I'll catch myself sitting for 10 minutes. I got caught up in something. And, like,
Yes.
and then somebody comes back in the room and they're like, you're still here. And you're like, oh no, like you've been caught.
Yes.
Because you're like, oh my God, this thing just sucked me in.
It's like a trap, or it's like, and it's weird because I mean, that's right. That's what's going on right now with the South Node, is meeting up with these two planets. And there's this like,
Yeah, let's talk
there's
about
this
that.
like, there's this like sucking energy where you get sucked into this thing. And it's like, it's hard to get out of. Yeah. Because like, I found that I literally have to turn the thing off, because I'll literally just innocently, right? I'll go, oh, let me check, so and so, like even you and I mean, we message each other on there, right? I
Yeah,
go, oh, let me check what Shreen said about what like what we're going to talk about,
yeah,
so I can write down, the things that are like our, talking points or whatever.
right,
And the
right.
next thing I know, like, this person's messaging me and that person, and the little notification, so and so said something, so and so tagged, and the next thing you know, like 2 hours have gone by and you're like, oh man.
2 hours, exactly. No, it's terrifying. I know. It's really, I mean, I really hope that Saturn can help us, save us from this, to stop wasting our time. Well, and before we started recording, we were talking about Chiron, because last year we were right in the, so we were actually, a year
Yes.
ago, we were, because we're just coming out of Mercury retrograde again now, but a year ago we were, was it a Mercury retrograde when we did that?
Yes.
P40,
Mm-hmm.
in Aries, right?
In Aries. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This time it was in Pisces.
Yeah.
But I think we were like right in it around this time, right? I think we were still doing
We
that.
were totally in it, because like when I take my cat for his walks,
Yeah.
I'm noticing like the same natural phenomenon. Like, remember those pictures I got of the ferns unfurling,
Yes,
and
I recognize that.
yeah, and like there's the same tree that's blooming, and that's why I said the spring is not the same without you, because I'm thinking of like that time, when I see these things, that those pictures now have like connotations and stuff in my head. But yeah, that was a trip, because we were focusing, the theme was Mercury retrograde, right? And I wrote a book on Mercury, so I was kind of focusing on that.
Yes.
But the whole point of Project 40 is that it's like this alchemical container for this transformational process to happen, right? And so it was really crazy, because here I am, like telling people, yeah, the Negretto is happening and it's breaking stuff down, and it's starting, psychologically, you're starting to cook, and like, it might break things free, and you might find like disturbing dreams or something, right? So here I am, and it's almost like you're talking about yourself in the third person. It's this weird, I'm telling people, and then next thing you know, what happens? I have a dream where I'm like putting my father in the crematorium, and then and then I hear this banging on the door, is trying to get out and screaming and stuff, and I'm like, oh my God. You talk about disturbing dreams, what the hell was that? And of course there was this huge key symbol in,
Oh yeah.
right there was this key that was like literally like waist high. It was like unmistakable, and I'm like, oh my God, Chiron wants to talk.
Yes. I
Right?
mean, that's in Chiron. Were you having your Chiron return
Yeah, that was just before my
then?
first hit of my Chiron return,
Yeah,
which I had kind of blown off, to be honest with you. I mean,
that's right.
I
Because
was,
you're so focused on Mercury, but I can't remember. Was Mercury hitting your? Was there a Mercury Chiron thing going on also at that time?
well, they're conjunct in my natal chart.
Yeah.
And yeah, they were both, getting ready to be in Aries together. So
There you. That's incredible. I mean, people that don't believe in astrology and the same. I mean, that's what I love that about Project 40. And do you know I finished my last Project 40?
I know, I was like, oh my God, it's the end of an era. What the hell?
I
How can
know.
this be?
It's a big empty space now in my life. It's so funny. Like I went through like a depression, but I had to go through the real like mourning of it before it can it hasn't had a rebirth. Maybe after this new moon in Aries, I'm waiting for the rebirth still. But
Uh-huh.
that was one of the last
Yeah.
ones, and
Wow.
and
Wow.
it's a
I'm
very
just,
thing. It's a very that the last P40 of them was an Uranus and Aries incarnation. It was born
mm-hmm.
from Uranus and Aries.
Mm.
it died when Uranus went into Taurus.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah. You know, and that's the other thing. I mean, so recently we had Chiron move into Aries, we had Uranus move into Taurus, and then Mercury's been plowing back and forth through Pisces.
Yeah.
So those three signs have all been like getting really stirred up.
Oh yeah.
And
Right. I can see.
and yeah, so a lot I've noticed that when I was still paying attention to social media and stuff, I mean, I had one lady come on I made a comment about, you know how I do the pictures of the loops and talk about like, oh, this part of the loop is like when there's the most dramatic like change in terms of the actual motion. And I was like, yeah, it's kind of like a roller coaster going over the edge, you know, and hold on. And I mean, I was trying to make a fun metaphor, like most people enjoy roller coasters, right? And people started commenting, oh my God, like, and this one lady got on there and she was like, holy crap, like 3 different people, she's a practitioner too, and she's like, holy crap, 3 different people have contacted me presenting, you know, with suicidal ideation. What do I do, you know? And I literally had to walk her through like the guidelines of like, you know, basically, you know, you have to figure out, you know, if they're a threat of harm to self or others, and, you know, and the basic guidelines of like, you know, make sure they have the information for hotlines or local resources and yada yada, right?
It's been a very, very
Uh,
good time.
Volatile. It feels very volatile. Like there's a lot of change just hit all at once, right? And people are sort of freaking out.
And the unknown on top of it. It's like this feeling of like death and change, but not knowing what's replacing the old paradigm. So I think that creates a lot of uneasiness and discomfort, because we sense like the old paradigm, the old world is dying, and that's been just increasing, but we don't have a sense of what is replacing it yet.
Right. Yep. And I mean that fits in too with like, you know, the Jupiter Saturn cycle, right? They're going to have a conjunction in 2020, and a lot of people are looking ahead to that and going, but hey, it's 2019, you know, like it's like the balsamic phase of that cycle. So we kind of got to get through this first before we can have that.
Well, and this is
rebirth.
We've got this preview already, even with this. I sensed like I could definitely feel, I don't know if it was the dark moon like getting closer and closer to Chiron, mixed with the Saturn Pluto with the south node. Like that energy is quite definitely that. I think that makes people feel like they're dying.
Yeah, you know, and it's not just the south node of the moon that those two cats are hitting, right? It's this, they're on their own south nodes as well.
That's why it's double. Yeah, that's a good point.
You know, and it's like, oh, I mean, Pluto doesn't hit its nodes but like twice in a 250-year cycle. So that's like for it to be like literally on the ecliptic plane means that like the Pluto principle is interacting with Earth the most directly, because one of the arguments, you know, for Pluto not being a planet is that it's so extremely, you know, tilted. So it can be 17 degrees off the ecliptic at times, right? So for it to be like, boom, right on, it's just like right on top of it, right? Really bearing down like all the Pluto energy. It's as real and as earthy and as like, you know, directly impacting the Earth plane as it does in only twice in its whole orbit, right? So it's like, wow. That alone is like, you know, pretty monumental. And then you got Saturn doing the same thing, and the lunar south node K2, which is like, you know, eclipse energy essentially, right?
Yep.
That's a handful. That's a big, it's a big deal.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of Pluto being so connected with the judgment archetype in the tarot, and how it's like we're all kind of coming out of our coffins now. Like there's this judgment day awakening feeling, and it's like, where are we? What have we just been living through?
That's interesting. Is that 20?
Mm-hmm.
That's Trump 20, right?
Yep.
That's interesting. I think if you do, there's different ways to do it, but you know how you add up your birth date and you get a number?
That's
I
right.
think that's mine. So
Right.
I'm like the high priestess and the judgment, right?
I remember that actually.
And back, you know how I became an astrologer was I started out like looking into shamanic type stuff, and because I had these dreams where the crows were talking to me,
Okay.
and I was trying to figure out what the heck is that, right? Yeah, because I was studying architecture, man. I was figuring out forces on beams and stuff, and I've got these animals talking to me at night, and I'm going, wait, what?
Saturn. Yes, baby is
And
coming.
so I started like visiting caves and this stuff, and eventually I read Jamie Sams. She has these medicine cards, right? Where it's like animal medicine, and she was talking about this. I think it was for bat medicine, and she was talking about this night of fear ritual where you go into the woods by yourself and you like sleep in a depression like a grave, right? So it's like literally a death rebirth initiation. And I was like, yeah, that's what I need. So I took off into the woods, and it just so happened I walked into the perfect place where this tree had fallen over, and you know how it creates that, the root ball, like, creates a depression, and then at the top of the hole, this stone had popped up and was just sitting there, like perfectly erect, and I was like, oh my God.
Whoa.
So
You
I
call
spent the night. So I literally enacted that tarot card without even knowing what I was doing.
sleep there all night? Did you crawl into the hole?
Sorry. Yeah, I did. I slept in the hole, and there was like an owl hooting over me. It was spooky, man.
Oh. And how did you get
Yeah.
the next day?
Well, I mean, it took a while, right? Basically like the next 2 years were me like disintegrating my old life and like finding a new life before. So that was kind of like my entrance into the underworld. And then 2 years later, I had my dream where I saw Venus and the sun and became an astrologer.
Whoa.
Um,
I
so
love that.
yeah, that card, that is very Plutonian, and that idea of, you know, transformation and stuff. I think the dangerous part about, you know, Pluto is that, as a god, he was, on the one hand, he was the only of those cats who was faithful to his woman, right? I mean, you don't hear about Pluto running around because like all he had was Persephone, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
but on the other hand, he was like kind of greedy, and he wanted to have more subjects for his kingdom, and he wouldn't let them go once they got there, So it's like, um, even though, I mean, as a 20 something year old, they say fools rush in where angels fear to tread. Like, don't try this at home, kids, because that was a very difficult journey. And the truth of it is that, if you aren't careful, you you might not make it out, right? Because there's a lot of pitfalls. You can get stuck in that, and if you don't have a guide, or like a map or something. I was lucky, right? I mean, but fortunately, I mean, that's the whole reason why you created like Project 40 like you did, because you can be the guide. You can provide people with the map where they can go through this thing within a safe, contained space, and they're not like, just winging it like I was.
Yeah.
And they don't have that danger of getting stuck, or, not being able to find the way out or whatever.
Right. Luckily, I mean, when I first started doing this archetypal work with astrology, I was working with an Aries man,
Mm.
at Steinbrecher, and one of the first things he said, because he tried to do it on his own, very Aries style too. Like he wanted to figure out how to like initiate himself through the archetypal realm through his he had an inner guide.
Uh-huh.
Figure out how he needed to have his guide, and that was his whole work, the inner guide meditation. But then at one point, I think he was just trying to like short step it, like, skip steps and just do a quick version of like, I just want to confront the devil archetype. I don't know what he was, I can't remember.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
And he was like, all right, we're not doing that again because he got stuck, and
Yeah.
maybe that happened before he found his guide. Actually, I have to read the story again. I might be that mixed up. That would make more sense. But in any case, the moral of the story was that without his guide, it was terrifying. I mean, it's like when people have those night terrors, you get caught in those archetypal dimensions where you're possessed or you can't move or you
Yeah.
have to
Yeah. So that's why, in the myths, the hero or heroine always either whether it's her name, Ariadne, the string or the breadcrumbs or some kind of way out, right? And Anna, she tells her helper, hey, if I don't come back, send for my uncle, it's because it's a place that you visit. It's not a place to be, for sure. That's why in the in the vitriol, vitriol is visita interiora terra, visit the interior of the earth. It's an alchemical saying. And through rectification, you will find the hidden stone. Well, notice they're saying visit. That means you don't go there and try to dwell there. You go there and come back, right? And so, yeah, it's really important to understand that part of it, that you've got to prepare the way out ahead of time.
Yeah, don't
so
move.
that
Yeah. You got to have an out. You got to have exit plan.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that is potentially, a very powerful opportunity in a lot of ways for experiencing that, rebirth archetype of the judgment card, right? Yeah.
It's just looping back to your dream last Mercury retrograde in Aries, Project 40, because that was such a powerful dream. And I think it would be helpful maybe to just share how you worked with that dream, just because I feel like we're in a time now where people should be really extracting the gold from their dreams.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And, yeah, so the dream itself was really disturbing, right? But, dreams are not necessarily meant to be taken literally, right? So the dream, the short, the Cliff Notes version of the dream is that I was kind of like one of these medieval monks, and my father had died, and myself and this other monk, he was sort of senior, not super senior. He was like a step or two ahead of me. And we were putting my father in the crematorium, and as we were doing that, it turned on, and the flames started, and I was like, oh man, better get out of here, and then we get outside, and this senior monk guy just smiles. In monastic settings, often you don't speak, right? There's a vow of silence, and so he just smiles and communicates with body language, right? And okay, that's done. And then he goes around the building, but he had taken this huge key, huge, I mean, all up waist high, and stuck it in the door and just left it there. And I was like, I don't know, but as far as I know, keys are for turning, right? So I turned the thing. I thought, he just forgot or whatever, dang space cadet. Or so I turned the lock, take the key, and walk back around, and then all these other monks are sitting there, and they're looking at this other door that I couldn't have seen. It's like they were expecting someone to come out of it. And they were looking all happy and stuff. And I was like, this is weird. Somebody just died, what's going on? And then I hear this boom, boom, boom on the, and I was like, holy shit, I locked the door and my father's in there.
He's not dead.
And of course, that's when I woke up. I was like, oh my God, what in the world, But I started working with the dream. I just was like, okay, let's just find the most obvious symbol in there was Chiron, right? So let's start working with Chiron. And it occurred to me that I had done some work with the other outer planets through their discovery charts. And I had gotten a lot out of that. So I was like, hey, I never did that for Chiron. Let's do that. So I started looking at the discovery chart, and I noticed that Chiron's in the 6th or the 5th house, somewhere below the horizon. And I'm thinking, how can you discover something when it's not even in the sky? Like, what the hell is going on here? And it sort of like triggered some of my, neurotic type stuff, where I start going, what the hell? Like, there's not even any like regular like methodology or whatever, like we don't even know what we're doing. Like, what is this? No wonder people think we're crazy. And then I realized, like, you're doing the dream right now. Like, the burning of the Father is like it's like in alchemy they call it calcination.
Yeah.
Where you burn something down to its base salts, right? To the mineral salts. So you can extract the basic essence of it, and and burn away all the impurities, right? So that's what the dream was telling me. The dream wasn't telling me anything about a wound. My father was still alive, and in fact, I had recently sort of mended things with him for the first time in a long time. So it wasn't telling me anything about a wound. It was kind of showing me my medicine, Chiron and Aries, right? Fire's cardinal fire, like burn that shit up and find the pure essence of it, and then build from that, rather than just accepting all this dogma that people have told you is true. Find the core of that truth for yourself and go from there, right? And I was like, wow, like, yeah, because, and again, this wasn't anything that I hadn't yet done. It was just showing me, like, keep doing that, right? That's good. Like, keep it up.
Can I just say that it's so funny that, we're in the new moon in Aries, and yesterday when when the moon was, it was the dark, but it was in Aries. And I heard that song Disco Inferno by the Tramps.
I saw you posted that.
Yes. And when I was young, I would dance to that for hours. My Aries could not get enough of that song.
Uh-huh.
Like, Chiron and Aries love that. But like, it's got all the Aries imagery.
The Inferno, man. Yeah. Cardinal fire.
I remember I would just put that on for hours. I had so much energy I could not burn through. It was kind of that dark, heavy moon, and I put that on, and I looked like a freak. I was literally dancing down my street. I could not control myself. Like, I kept replaying it like for hours. I was crazy. I was like, oh my God, this is the song. Like, to feel the burning, like to just feel like.
Yeah, that's calcination. That's
like burning in the soul. Like,
yeah, you recover that like pure basic life force urge, by burning away through all the shit that was laying on top of it, right?
We're
yeah,
all
totally.
Right now. So you're a great guide. I feel like, and I mean, I'm just coming on into my Chiron return. It hasn't happened yet, but it's like right on the border, but you just completed. So it's nice. It's so great to talk with you, to see like the process of like coming into the fire.
Yeah. And I think you remember, like, at some point, the talk got around to the whole wounded healer stuff. And I had a strong reaction I was like, man, I'm tired of hearing about this wound stuff. Like, I don't feel wounded. I don't, I feel like I feel like I'm entering part of my life where I'm becoming empowered and like learning how to really use my medicine, like my full range of medicine, because Chiron was a medicine man, essentially, right? He was like a philosopher and taught the art of war and healing and medicine and all that stuff,
Yep.
And I think that there's a lot of us that were born with Chiron and Aries.
Yep.
I think that, to me, that would be the message of ultimately that's what the Chiron return is about claiming the wisdom, claiming the medicine, and claiming, and like really just doing it and being that teacher of teachers, right?
Yes.
Because another thing that we were talking about is like this, we came up at a time where astrology was dominated by a generation of astrologers who had, kind of arrived on a pretty pristine scene that was like, wide open, and they could, they just kind of marched in and did their thing, did what they wanted. And then we came on a scene where was already pretty crowded with, you know, a lot of them. We kind of had to like really, you know, slowly work our way in and pay our dues and all that stuff. Which is fine. I mean, that's part of the whole Chiron, right? Chiron trained Jason and these other heroes, right? So there's a, you know, like paying respects to your teachers, and you know, you mentioned your teacher earlier, and all the people that you've, you know, that's always been something that I felt really strongly about. But I see a whole bunch of people coming in now, and let me just be clear before I say this, that's great. I love it that there's new generations coming into the field and that they've got new ideas. I'm down, like that's awesome. But what I see that's worrisome to me is like this idea of like, I don't know, you know, there's sort of this, I mean, in Marxist terms, it's like petty bourgeois. It's like they sort of, they mimic the ideals of the ruling class. They're like coming in like they're all that, like they just arrived, all that, right? And it's like, okay, look, I mean, I understand like confidence is important, you know, you need confidence to be on your game and all that, but like, you know, whoa, easy. Like, why not?
At the time, and you got to have time. Like they just feel like, because I think there's a couple of things. One, I think there are a lot of old souls that are like, hey, I remember this. Because I remember I'm an old soul, and I remember coming in thinking like, I know all this. But there's still the Saturn piece of it that you got to pay your dues. You got to.
And you got to honor the people that came before you. I mean, I think that's healthy. Like there's, you know, like, look, there's certain aspects of like patriarchy and whatnot that are complete bullshit and need to be done away with. Yeah. Glass ceiling, for instance, right? I mean, yeah. Like, okay, but this idea of honoring the people, I mean, hey, most of the time, the people that I'm honoring that came before me are women.
Yeah.
You know, Erin Sullivan, for instance, I mean, I mentioned her, like, you know, my book, like that little seed, that core seed of what she did in her, you know, classic on retrograde planets.
Yeah.
And you know, and you know what is awesome about that? I sent her one of my books, you know, and she wrote back saying, I love it. And like, you know, giving me feedback and like, I'm really glad you took this to the next level and blah, blah, blah. Okay. And that to me was so like gratifying, yes, but also just like, it was sort of affirming that, yes, I'm on the right path. Like, yeah. And that's necessary, you know, that's all part of the initiation, right? That's the relation. That's the positive Capricorn, right? Yeah, like honoring
your elders,
you know, and all that. So I would like to see a little bit more of that, I guess. But you know, that I think that yeah, with the Chiron return, you know, that's kind of where, you know, you step into that role and you begin to, you know, I'm teaching people now who I see have incredible potential, and I think to myself, wow, like, you know, imagine what they're going to do. You know, they're maybe just at their Saturn return or something, and I think to myself, oh my goodness, like, you know, I'm excited for them and all the you know, wonderful territory that they have to discover and grow into and all that.
Yeah, what do you think, Gary? I was just thinking, like, it just gave me a light bulb, like that the Chiron return could be the time when we really do step into the role, a different level. I see a lot of people when they go through their Chiron return do step into the role of the teacher and are really ready to then pass on their medicine, because that's definitely what's happening with mine too, is I've been talking about it for years. I'm finally this year, I just started my Priestess Healing Arts certification.
That's awesome. Hey,
forever, but
congratulations. Yeah, that's fabulous. Yes, I mean, let's not forget, right? The heroine's journey, right? She leaves the village and she goes out into the wilderness. And she has this confrontation, you know, like Dorothy with the Wicked Witch. There's a million versions, but right. But then she still has to bring that back home. Yeah, has to bring the boon back. and integrate it back into, and so like going on that journey and having those discoveries is wonderful, but integrating it back into and sharing it with the next generations, and like, you know, leaving that, encapsulating that medicine in books and classes and whatever, so that it revitalizes the world and carries the all that on. That's the ultimate responsibility, right?
I love that.
It's like, I mean, without that, it's not really, it may, you know, what do they say? It's like when I was working in the mental health field, if you didn't document it, it didn't happen. You know, it's like I could go out and spend all this great time with, you know, clients and whatnot, but the documentation is important to make sure that, you know, there's a written record, or there's a, you know, that it kind of just encapsulates that experience and allows it to be formalized in a way that it's then able to carry forward. It becomes like a seed, right? It becomes like a seed from which, you know, new things can, and who knows who will take what you or I did and go like in all kinds of directions with it. And that's awesome, like go, but we've got to do the work of like creating those seeds first before that can happen. So yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about that, and seeing a lot of my colleagues and what they're coming up with and how they're handling that. And I think that, you know, I remember back when I was first breaking into the ranks, you heard a lot of the older astrologers talking about, well, where are all the young astrologers, right? We don't have that question. Like, I don't think we have to ask that question. Where are they, right? Like,
Are they not?
yeah. So like the fact that they're here and that they're arriving on the scene is great. But I think there's a lot of hopefulness for me, for our art and for our, you know, our way of seeing the world, to like have a beautiful next, you know, set of chapters that could really, like, you know, be, I mean, who knows what's possible. So, you know, I mean, it's easy to get dispirited. Like I said, you know, you get all, I mean, the media is great at giving us bad news, but they're not so great at giving us the good news, you know, because the bad news is like the drama that sells, right? It's like the clickbait. It's like, you know, and I just try to focus on the good news, is that like there's a whole nother level of astrologers arriving on the scene and doing their thing. And like I said, our roles is to leave them something that they can like take and as a seed and take it further, and, you know, pass the baton and all that stuff. And I'm really excited. I feel really blessed that that's the case, right? It would suck to be going like who's gonna, like, looking around going like, who's gonna, like, you know, step up. So the fact that we don't have that problem is awesome.
Yes. Well, I think that's a beautiful note to end the podcast on. I want to keep talking to you. We're going to have to do another one. I got to come back. I'll talk to you, or you come back to me.
That sounds good. Yeah, I'll interview you next time, and we'll talk some more about, we wanted to talk about Venus and Pisces, right?
Yeah, but okay, that's what we'll do the next time.
All right, cool.
And it's Venus Day, but we got into our Aries.
The Aries took over. We got possessed.
We did. We're like, because we had to reconnect with the Aries, because that's where we left off. I think it was important to talk about all this Chiron energy, though. I'm really glad we did.
Awesome. Yeah. Fantastic. It's always great to talk to you anytime. And it's a great honor, and thank you very much.
Thank you.